explain why they're doing this?
Cute girl with the vest is on the run as Sam is trying to lock Madison into a closet. Dean saves Miss Vest just in the nick of time and she runs off to go live her life another day.
Yay!
Mr. Werewolf is Glenn, Maddie's incel next door neighbor, and he also blacks out when he turns and Dean lets him die.
I felt so bad for him.
I don't feel that bad for him, but...
Okay, you can go away. He just sounded so, lost and terrified when he woke up, and I felt so bad for him.
I mean, okay, I'm gonna say a thing, though. So, Madison, when she wolfs out, she's killing people who are, actually threatening to her.
Yeah.
You know, her boss who hits on her, her stalker ex-boyfriend. She's killing people, and she will eventually start killing random people, but the first people that she's killing are these people who are, these men who are threatening her. Glenn is killing sex workers who are just working.
I don't agree with that, but I'm still allowed to feel bad for scumbags.
That's fair.
Because I'm a good person. Sometimes.
Maddie wakes up in her closet, which is absolutely trashed after she wolfed out in it all night.
Yeah.
Sam's
the claw marks all over the walls.
all over. Sam says he's going to leave her alone, but Maddie is realizing that the math is mathing and Sam was right. They don't actually leave, though. They're hanging out in the car outside her house. Dean makes a breeding king joke, and if only Dean Winchester knew how much Omegaverse fanfic was written about him on the internet. Dean tries to very gently transition to Sam's feeling about Madison, which is difficult after that kind of joke.
Yeah.
But he honestly is very good about it for once. I was very impressed with the care that Dean took going into this conversation.
Oh, good job, Dean.
I think he learned a lot from Sarah. The way that Sam reacted to him teasing about Sarah. I think Dean has a couple realizations about how Sam feels attraction and how Sam deals with attraction, because he handles it so much better in this episode.
True.
Maddie knocks on Sam's window because, they're just sitting on an empty street in the most recognizable car ever.
Yeah.
And Dean tells her that they're lurking to make sure she doesn't turn tonight. They're pretty sure she won't, but just in case.
I feel like most of the times they've done this, the person they're watching has known they were there.
Yeah.
And then said so to their faces.
I feel enough times. Even if it's not most times, it's enough times.
It's happened enough for you to figure something else out.
And Maddie's I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that you were correct. You might as well come and wait inside. Invites them in. Dean knew that Sam liked Maddie, but there's a moment when Sam and Maddie are staring at each other and Dean is watching Sam's face and something happens on Dean's face. He's having a realization. And I can't really articulate what that realization is, but he's staring at Sam, staring at Madison, and he's I think he's realizing this is not just trying to get a hookup for Sam. They have to go the whole night waiting for Madison to turn. They hang out all night and sunrise happens. Madison's still Madison. That should be really good news, but there's still 9 minutes of episode left, so
it's too many minutes.
There's gotta be
something.
Never good.
Something else has to happen. Dean says he's gonna go back to the motel and leaves Sam there, and Madison is still down to fuck, but Sam has some reservations given that he literally tied her to a chair. But
yeah, I'm surprised he's the one with reservations after that.
Yeah, Madison's well, after that I did kind of try to eat you, so I guess I guess that's fine. I guess we can move past this.
It's fair.
This is the first time we've seen Sam have sex on camera. And the only other women we've seen him really interact with romantically have been Jess and Sarah for one episode each. And this is a lot more than we ever saw with either of them.
Indeed it is.
And then going back to last season when we saw Dean and Cassie in Dean's first on camera sex scene, immediately that scene with Dean and Cassie was filmed in the literal dark. This one, not only is it daytime, but they've actually lit the scene well so we can see the veins in Jared's arm muscles.
How exciting.
This is also much more aggressive. There's a lot of teeth on skin here, but a lot of the shots are actually very similar in terms of how Madison and Sam are positioned in shots versus how Dean and Cassie were positioned. There's a lot of similarities in how the different shots are set up and the sequence of them. I just noticed that those scenes were very similar.
Good for you.
And again, I want to be whatever kind of assistant Madison is, because her and Sam are curled up in the middle of her bed and there's 3 layers of pillows between the headboard and Sam and Madison, so they're already pretty far down the bed, and Jared still has a ton of room. This bed is absolutely massive.
Maybe she comes from a rich family.
She has such a nice house. I would just like to know what, like, I know she's an assistant for Nate. I just want to know, like, what Nate's doing that his assistant makes this much money. San Francisco is not a cheap city to live in.
No. Yeah. But also, maybe she already, like, came from money.
Maybe.
Her family's rich.
Mean, honestly, I kind of hope so. Because
gives you more hope.
Like,
exactly.
Sam wakes up and Madison is all wolfed out, but she gets outside before he can grab her.
That's how you kill the mood.
Yeah, very much. Like, now they decide to call Bobby, who I'm assuming thinks that they are absolute morons, because of course severing the bloodline didn't work.
You listened to John.
Yeah, like, oh, you just, like, you didn't want to, like, see if Bobby knew anything before you tried that? Like, you just wanted to do that without checking with Bobby to see if anybody else had tried that already? Sam is absolutely desperate to save Madison. Somehow, some way, even though everyone pretty much agrees it's impossible to cure werewolfism. I don't know why I chose to say werewolfism instead of lycanthropy, but okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lycanthropy is a much better word.
I was just prepared to accept it. Let you make up words.
Dean tries to broach the idea that maybe they have to kill Madison, but Sam's not ready to hear that. And she calls. She's just like wearing Sam's shirt and nothing else in a phone booth randomly. Poor girl.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, not good.
At least Sam's shirt is like ginormous. Like it covers everything.
She doesn't even have shoes, though.
No. I hopefully the ground, like whatever area she ended up in, like was like an area where like they clean the streets regularly.
Hopefully it's not too hot outside.
Yeah, I think it's very early in the morning at least. Maddie says she doesn't remember anything. She probably killed someone, but they don't know. Dean's really honest with her. Like he's like, there is no cure. Like we can lock you up at night, but eventually you're gonna, get out. Like you're gonna not be, like you're gonna break out eventually, no matter how careful we are. And if that happens, you will kill someone else. Maddie comes to terms real fast with the situation. Like, she was in very, like, huge denial the whole time she was tied to that chair. But since she's, like, accepted the fact that she's a werewolf, she's really accepted the fact that she's a werewolf. And she picks up Dean's gun and asks Sam to do it. She wants him to do it, but he can't. She says, "This is the way you can save me. I'm asking you to save me." And then we see Dean watching them, and Dean needed to hear that. After the several times he has now not killed Sam when Sam's done something that might be too much. Dean comes and takes the gun, and Sam's like having a moment to feel his feelings, and Dean says like, "I'm sorry, I'll do it." And Sam like, "Sam, you don't have to." Sam says he does have to and makes Dean give him the gun, and Sam is like crying, like fully crying. Jared was really into the scene, but he goes into the other room. But interestingly, we stay with Dean for the fatal gunshot.
I think that's kind of a more impact's way to do it. Like, we don't actually see her die. We're staying like on this more emotional plane.
Yeah, we're staying with the brothers. Like Dean's on the verge of tears as well, and like he flinches at a gunshot, even though he's been growing up around guns his entire life. Like a gunshot doesn't bother him. This one does, because he knows like this is about like how Sam's feeling.
Yeah, and I think that staying with Dean was a very good decision, because like instead of like focusing on her death and seeing like blood and trauma, we see like a quieter sort of trauma.
Yeah, or even seeing Sam's face. Like we see Dean grieving for Sam.
Yeah. It keeps the tone of the episode very well.
But that's where the episode ends. It just ends on that gunshot, which is all too loud.
So bad. I don't like it. It's so too many emotions. I don't like them.
Total death count this week. We technically only saw 2 deaths because Madison and Glenn, I'm sorry, but you guys don't count. You're werewolves, and so you don't count on the death count.
That's so mean.
I know. That brings our on-screen total to 184, and the on and off-screen total for this episode was 2+, because Sam wasn't very specific when he told Dean about a bunch of murdered sex workers.
Fair.
Yeah, he didn't say how many. He just said several. And so the on and off screen show total is 1,303+. MVP of the week. Meredith, who would you like to nominate as this week's most valuable person?
I'm tempted to say Sam, but I kind of want to say Dean, because, I don't know, he was very good with Sam this week. Like, he was very sensitive to the fact that Sam was going through something very difficult.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So, Dean, Moira, how about you?
I want to say Sam. I think arguments can be made for both Dean and Madison as well, but Sam was, like, really doing his best. He tried to help as much as he could,
Yeah, okay, so we have a Sam and a Dean. I'm gonna split between the boys. I literally wrote in my notes that I'm split between the boys, so either 0.5 each or whichever one needs it more. So, like, whichever one was down.
Yeah.
So since you guys went one for one each, 0.5 for each, Sam and Dean from me.
They both did a lot this week, and they deserve to have their efforts acknowledged.
Yeah,
exactly.
It was a lot this week. Bechdel test. Do we have two named women this episode? No, the only woman in this episode is Madison. And at the start of the episode, a couple of her friends, but none of them are named.
Yeah.
So that's a no. This week's case of the week was a werewolf. It was actually 2 werewolves. Meredith, do you have some mythology for us?
I do. I didn't have any time to research or write real notes this week, which means all my notes are from my prior knowledge of werewolves, and I'm going to do more detailed notes and research for the next werewolf episode in 6 seasons. Because werewolves have a really cool history and you deserve to know it. Okay, so a werewolf is a type of shapeshifter. In modern fiction, they are humans infected with a condition called lycanthropy, which they catch from other werewolves, usually through bites. And then they transform into wolves or wolf-like creatures every full moon and go crazy and eat people and animals. Usually they eat the whole body, though. I don't know where the heart thing came from. I think that's just supernatural, but I could be wrong. Often a werewolf will keep some wolf-like traits for the remainder of the month, such as fangs, yellow eyes, pointed ears, or thick body hair. And the only way to kill a werewolf is with silver. Historically, werewolves vary a lot. Sometimes they literally turn into wolves. Sometimes their wolf form is actually an astral projection they create when they fall asleep, which is very cool, and I never see. Some they can transform willingly, or their transformation is triggered by different environmental or magical factors. There are solitary werewolves and entire werewolf clans where it's hereditary. There's a lot of variety. I'm not sure where the association with the moon came from or how old it is, but I'll know by the time we see another werewolf on this show. I think the biggest difference between modern and historical werewolves is that killing them with silver, and only silver, is actually a pretty recent thing. I want to say it's from the last 100, 200 years, give or take.
Wow.
Yeah. So werewolves feature heavily in medieval literature. What's interesting is that they weren't always the villain, like you might expect. I actually once read a story in university where the main character was a powerful nobleman who was also a werewolf. Here, he could only change back to his human form if he had his clothes, I'm pretty sure, sort of like Selkies and their sealskins. In this story, the nobleman's wife and her lover plotted to steal her husband's clothes and take all his property for themselves. So he was stuck in his wolf form for a while until he befriended the king, and the king helped him out, and there was a happy ending. Yay! Also, in the Middle Ages and the early modern era were werewolf trials, which are exactly what they sound like. Instead of looking for a witch, we're looking for a werewolf. There's a pretty cool card game based around this concept. Also, we think werewolf may have been a term for serial killers in some parts of Western Europe. If we look at records from this time, we see perpetrators of really gruesome crimes confessing to turning into wolves and killing people. It's also worth noting that they confessed while being horrifically tortured, so take that with a grain of salt. Also, there's a whole bunch of other fun werewolf stories and shenanigans that I remembered and didn't have time to include. Just know that there are lots of them, and they are wild, and there's a lot of gore if you're into that. In conclusion, werewolves are old and weird, and we are not properly utilizing all the myths about them, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you.
While Moira's here and I'm here, I just wanted to plug our other podcast, Series of Opinions. We did an episode, I think it was episode 20, on mythical biology, so the biology of different monsters. So we did vampires and werewolves, and we talked about the different pop culture werewolf mythology. Yeah. And we covered that in an episode. So if you want to hear more about monsters and werewolves, that's a good place to go.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Also, yeah, Moira and I have another podcast together.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for an excuse to bring it up.
Of course.
Should find more excuses. We hardly ever mention it here.
I know. I guess highlight and lowlight. And let's start with Moira. Do you have a highlight and a lowlight this week?
I do. My lowlight was Madison asking Sam to kill her, and the I'm asking you to save me, because it was just so heart-wrenching and I didn't want to have to watch it. And then my highlight was right at the beginning when Dean and Sam were talking about werewolves, and Dean is just being a geek about werewolves and Sam is making fun of him for it. That was my highlight.
That's fair. Meredith, how about you? though?
My low light, Madison's death was very hard to get through, and I don't like sex scenes, so I'm gonna add that too.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's just me. But highlight, I don't know. I think I like that. I like how Dean was behaving. I think he was doing really well, especially with like Sam and what he was going through. I'll say that.
Okay. Yeah. My low light was Sam tying a woman to a chair and not doing a great job of explaining to her why he felt the need to do that.
Yeah.
That is a really good low light.
Yeah, she's a werewolf, but like you could try a little bit harder to explain that to her.
You could try a little bit harder to like not seem like a serial killer.
Yeah.